What is up, everybody out there? It is Friday, May 8th, 2020. The last graded assignments happening today. Hooray! We made it to the finish line. So, I went over everything about what you need to do for the end of the year things. So, on yesterday's video, so if you didn't check out yesterday's video, make sure you check that out because I run down everything, and I mean everything on there. So make sure that you check that out if you haven't done so already. You're hopefully watching today's video so you get a nice rundown of the nitrogen cycle because you shouldn't have any questions about what is happening once we go through our nitrogen cycle thing for today. So let's go ahead and just run it down here. Let's get things rolling here. Our final one happening. I'm going to transition cut right there. Boom. Look at that. Full screen diagram. Let me boost it up just a little bit so that you can see all the letters. Let's start with the basics. On A, we're talking about nitrogen. Nitrogen's in the air. It makes up 78% of our air. Most people think it's oxygen because that's the stuff that we need to breathe. But that's actually in like the 20s, if not the lower teens, depending on where you're at. There could be different levels of stuff in the air, but usually it hovers around there. But 78% is going to be our nitrogen about that's happening on there. And the weird thing about it is that we do not directly use that when we breathe that in with the oxygen and other things. That gets sucked right back out of our bodies when we release air. Our bodies cannot use it in the nitrogen gas way, which is why we need the nitrogen cycle to be involved so that we can get the nitrogen so that we can make things like DNA. We can make certain proteins because we have nitrogen, a part of both proteins and DNA inside of our body. So that's two very important molecules. We covered that earlier in the year. So those are two very important things that we need to do. With nitrogen. So it's just in the air when it's in A. And now what happens is that it basically has one way that it gets into the cycle, basically. And that is from, I'm pointing to the screen. You can't even see me point to the screen. That is over here with C, where we are using the bacteria that are in roots. It's a mutualistic relationship. You may have seen on roots, they have these little bulbs almost on them, these little circular spherical things that are attached to them. Those are little pockets of bacteria that are going to do nitrogen fixation, which is what the process is going on there for D, is the fixation of the nitrogen to fix it into a good thing. Then we have nitrogen in the soil, and on a lot of the diagrams, this is where it gets into all the fancy types of nitrogens that you can have. You have nitrates, nitrites, NO2s, NO3s. There's a bunch of that stuff going on there. For our purposes, it's just nitrogen that's now in the soil. The bacteria is taking it from the air, putting it into the soil. Now, from the soil location, it's basically got two ways that it could go. One of the ways is that it could go through F, where the bacteria in the soil releases the nitrogen back into the air. Or it can go from E all the way back up to plants, which remember E is just nitrogen in the soil. And the plants absorb the nitrogen in their roots. And then the plants have the nitrogen inside of them so that when we start the food chain, like with the happy little bunny here, the bunny eats the plant. The bunny is getting the nitrogen then at that point. And then the bunny can, or whatever thing eats the plants, will supply the nitrogen for the rest of the food chain. So the food chain is a very critical process for the nitrogen cycle. So if we do anything to tamper the nitrogen cycle, we would be tampering with the food chain probably too. Or the food chain tampering would affect the nitrogen cycle in those ways. B, from the bunny, is that one way that nitrogen can return back to the soil is through your poop. So poop contains some nitrogen in there. So fertilizer, you might see that there's a couple of things on fertilizer, that key elements in there. One of those elements is nitrogen, because it puts more nitrogen back into the soil so plants can grow better because they need it to grow as well. So B there is waste. I think I have it called in this one. Yeah, it's waste. That's fecal matter, poo, that kind of stuff there. And then we got over there by the dead, decaying log is death and decomposition. That is also how nitrogen can return back to the soil. The whole circle of life type of business, Lion King stuff going on there, where the lions return to the grass or the soil so that the grass can feed on it, that whole thing. That's decomposition going on there. So that's a rundown of all the parts of the diagram. You've got these 6 questions. I got a couple of different things going on there, like which one's the bacteria in the roots, bacteria in the soil, 78%, which we mentioned all that. Producers, remember, is just another fancy word for plant. Nitrogen fixation is the big one that converts the nitrogen in the air to something that is more usable. And then we got decomposition. We've covered that for a couple of weeks here. And then you got your 3 questions at the very end of why is this cycle important, what positive, negative things can you take away from it. And that is it. When you hit submit and submit this as the last graded thing, now there will be some more stuff coming to you next week because we'll provide some enrichment activities since we still got a week left. For us, I'm going to give you the frog dissection website that we've made. That kind of covers all the organs and stuff for frog dissection. And if you like to type along with things, we got a little thing to follow along with that. I'm going to post all of that on Monday, and you are free to kind of go about it at your own pace. Kind of pick and choose some of the parts that you would like to do out of there, or at least look at the website to get a good idea of what some of the things are. Unfortunately, due to things, we won't be doing that, but luckily in high school you should be able to do some dissections as well there. So there's not a complete missed opportunity happening. My video is going to be posted on there as well of me doing a frog dissection from last year. So you'll be able to see me get hands into the frog there of how you would have actually done it and see how nifty of a process that it was. We weren't going to do worms this year, I don't think at all, because we didn't just get any more worms. We were going to spend longer on the frog. We were going to spend an entire week on the frog instead of just a couple of days on it. So we had prepped it for being a longer time with the frog actually this year, but with things being the way that they are, we didn't get to that due to our stuff. But we do have all the things to try to do that kind of simulation stuff for you, so hopefully you can check some of that stuff out there. Once again, remember, if you're having troubles with anything or you have any confusion on what is happening, ask questions about it. Once Monday hits and I start grading some of the things in there, you'll start to either see your grade stay the same, or some of you might get changed to a P for passing. Because remember, if you scored lower than your third quarter score on the fourth quarter, you just get a pass instead of an actual grade there. If you got higher or the same, you get your actual grade. So some of you might be receiving some P's in there. Some of you might just be receiving your grades because some of you have absolutely killed it during this time. And my hats go off to you for doing that stuff. I'll probably have another message or two next week as kind of like a final send-off kind of thing. So yeah, you should be getting hopefully an email with our award stuff coming up as well. We just filmed that today. So you should be hopefully getting that sometime next week. Honor roll, high honor roll. We pick our top students for each subject. So all that stuff is going to be going out there probably next week. You'll be picking up your rewards when you go in on that. I think it's May 19th for our stuff. The tables are already set out. They're already prepping for it. Remember, for all that stuff, you got to wear a mask, all that kind of stuff when you bring it in. You have designated times. Check that checklist to know what's happening there. And always remember, I don't think I said it at the very beginning, but we'll end this one this way. It's Friday. It's a good day. And it's always a great day to be a junior Potter.